You're listening to Consolidate That. Ukraine is my motherland. It is now under a savage attack by Russia. Ukraine is shielding Europe and the rest of the civilized world from Putin's barbaric aggression. Ukrainians are brave and effectively fighting back. Let's help. Make a donation to Armed Forces of Ukraine. Link is in the show notes. Hashtag Stand with Ukraine.
Welcome back to Consolidate That, Ivan. I'm glad that we get to do a special one-on-one episode talking about some really cool things that we found from this year's Burnout survey. So why don't you tee up a little bit of the background of what we did, who responded, and how we're going to be using these as actionable items.
Hey, Ryan. Yeah, this is exciting third year study that we did by surveying 2,000 respondents. Well, we actually surveyed more, but then our statistician chopped half of that. So there was about 4,000 respondents, but to get a clean data, we used 2,000 of them. And the goal was to get insight, as usual, to measure sort of the temperature around the burnout in this industry this year, and then also to test a couple hypotheses that we have. And that's what we do every year. So this year, we wanted to understand whether compensation is related to burnout and the structure of the compensation. So commission versus salary, which is something we talked about with you a year or so
Mm-hmm.
ago. But that's being challenged now. So it will be interesting to talk about that. And then preferred work arrangements. Would people want to work remotely? Specifically techs, well, actually every role in the hospital, techs, CSRs, managers, and doctors. And also the impact of euthanasia. And also we parsed it between the euthanasia as it is and specifically economic euthanasia when it is the reason is inability of the client to afford the procedure.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know we did that episode a while back. So if people want to go and hear some of the just different types of compensation models that are out there, you can go back and check those out. But what was I know we had a thesis and we thought that going to a salary only model was something that would be a burnout reduction, right? Reduce burnout, and that the pro sal model and negative accrual and things like that were one of the triggers. What did the results say from this? And then also, what has been our results internally with what we've been doing within our own practices?
Well, the reason why we wanted to run this slice and understand because we had hypotheses that we just were running off, so we wanted to actually see because we thought that salaried is much preferred over the commission based structure. So that's something that we ran with, and also the whole variety of different compensation models in the industry. It's interesting to see what is the best mix for in the slice of burnout prevention. So whether you compare salary only, baseline with commission, pro sell, straight production model, so all of that stuff, we kind of wanted to see what is that best sort of way of compensating veterinarians and the teams as well, because a lot of the times people focus on the veterinarian compensation only, but they're not the only people that are working in the clinic. And I think this is where the biggest mistake of the industry is that we are seeing how the vets are going to bring money into the hospital, which is wonderful, but they're not the only ones that are doing that. So creating a compensation model that motivates everybody is really important. So the hypothesis that we had before was that salary is the best thing out there because then it doesn't force veterinarians to basically push more, and then also that it creates less stress on them, and then so that was our theory. But as it
Right.
turned out, it's interesting that there's a correlation of financial security to burnout. And it's interesting that there's no direct correlation as I'm on commission, I'm more or less burned out, and I'm on salary, I'm more or less burned out. But the way that we arrive to a conclusion is that veterinarians that feel in a more secure financial position are less burned out. So, and there's nuance to it. And then when we asked those that feel or don't feel financial security, those that are on commission feel more secure for the future and planning and retirement. And those that are on salary don't feel that they're financially secure. So we made an inference that basically those that are on commission feel more secure, therefore less burned out. So we kind of bashed our last year idea.
That's interesting. Yeah, because that's such a sort of unexpected thing, but it's also, I guess, if you were to just say, hey, you can't just scrap everything that people's minds have been trained to do for years and years. Do you think that there's a factor of conditioning behind that thought? Or do you think it's, that's a true representation of the situation? Coming from a commission based world for a long time, and moving more to salary based life, I personally feel more secure because, I know what the amount of money is going to be there every single month. But do you think that it is a conditioning that vets are used to something and that's why they feel more secure in it, or do you think that that's a true an outcome of what they have?
It's hard to say. As they say in God, we trust the rest bring data. So, we had a certain hypothesis, and it was proven, but we don't have that. Like, we don't really have something to make that conclusion based on data. I think it makes sense. The other thing that I don't want to make anybody confused is that commission means less burnout. I don't think so. I think that sort of correlation says that people that have more thinking and understanding of their financial future are the people that reported to be less burnout. Is it dependent on that? I'm not sure. Like, this is not, directly, okay, you put
Yeah.
everybody on commission, therefore they're less burned out. I don't think it's an instrument. It's just an interesting correlation. But then how did they arrive there? I think there's also more factors that people might be. So just like me before I completely burned out, I was happy making a lot of money, but at the same time, did it do any good for me? You know what I mean? Like, I
Hmm.
thought that it's amazing that I'm on commission, so I would report that I feel, better about my financial future, but I could be completely burned out. So it's just, I don't think that there's a direct correlation, and I think that it's probably not a conditioning. Like, I don't think it would be that it's kind of like an opinion that you control your future. I think there's more factors that we need to uncover through data to actually answer your question, which is a really good question, but I think I just don't
Yeah.
have enough information to put it together.
Yeah, perhaps in next year's survey, it would be interesting to see the amount of time or the amount of brain power that's put into the financial understanding of the entire practice. Because I do find that that's something that on commission, I think people do take a greater interest in. Okay, well, how many bookings are we getting? How busy is my calendar? Not when can I take off today because I'm already getting paid, but more so, how much can I accomplish in the time that I'm here? Because if I'm going to be here, I might as well make it worthwhile. Um, and by having that insight, maybe seeing a direct dollar correlation to that input and output, perhaps that's where we're seeing some of that outcome. What do you think is going to be, from what we saw, what do you find is perhaps the new hypothesis that we want to take into the world and test throughout this year and see in our upcoming results or upcoming surveys?
Well, one thing that I want to admit on the podcast that I think I'm going to stop beating the drum on salary being an answer to the burnout. So I think that then they, unfortunately, and I'll blame it on our amazing head of PR, Galina, because she ran the data.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's her fault.
she
Um,
really tells us what to say, and sometimes she's extremely wrong. But
yeah, but well, apparently not this time. And but I think what it's interesting what you mentioned before I answer your question is that the impact that it will have on the team, I think, is very important component of burnout. Because if you'll think about the classic 6 triggers of burnout that we're talking about, constantly developed by Christina Maslach. If let's say people would feel more compensated and sufficiently rewarded through that mechanism, which is one of the triggers, insufficient reward, but at the same time, when we design the veterinarian's compensation without considering the rest of your team, the other triggers I think could be pulled. So, such as conflict of values, You have work overload, you have community breakdown and unfairness because people that work for you as a veterinarian pushing now and getting the higher compensation, they're still paid their minimal pay as a techs, and the assistants and everybody else. So without motivating the rest of the team, I think you can create an environment where everybody's burned out and pissed off by driving compensation. So as you ask about the new hypothesis, I think we want to understand the impact of employee ownership. We are designing this staffing bonus structure because I think that if you will reward the team who is helping veterinarian to drive commission, that combination is probably the best. And and what we want is to test those theories, A, in practice in our hospitals, and then B, through maybe a survey next year.
So, if I'm just to make sure I'm sort of hearing you right, the thought is that perhaps not just commission for, do this dental receive this amount of money, but the understanding of a correlation between effort and income or reward to that, and being able to scale that so that not everyone's on commission. You don't want the receptionist to have to be on commission for how many phone calls they answer, but um, a trigger that shows the ability to be able to directly, input more effort and see a greater reward that comes out of that.
So let me unpack that. So where we kind of stumbled upon it. So through our employee ownership research and everything that we're trying to implement at Galaxy, we realized that giving shares to someone is not going to move the needle. And the way that I thought about it is like, okay, you tell CSR that now you're a shareholder, and they go, "Oh my God, stay after hours and happy to work and everything else." Doesn't work. So it appears that it needs to very much more involvement, and it does need to come from a couple places. One, it's not about compensating everybody for the number that they approve, but it's creating a camaraderie amongst the team by creating a there's a long-term ownership. So you, if you're a shareholder, there's long-term ownership, but then you need a short-term wins such as bonus structure. And the mistake that we see in the vet industry is that bonus is something that is associated with like annual review. And in corporate world, I was at IDEX, and it was like, and in March we get bonus for what? Well, and I asked, my colleagues, and I was like, so how do I get there? Like, what do I do to get bonus? And they were like, well, you just kind of get it. Like there's
Exist.
nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've never seen anybody not get it. I'm like, well, what's the point of calling it bonus? And well, I mean, you can call it bonus, but it's rather a gift. It's not a
Yeah,
reward.
it's just delayed salary.
Right. It's like it's a part of your comp. So, and I think that's wrong. I think that the bonus is the reward. It's not a gift. So, to get the reward, I need to know what to do to get there. And we stumbled upon a really cool methodology called Great Game of Business, which we are now incorporating at Galaxy. It's essentially, there's two components. It's an open book management, which everybody's terrified of, and they don't want to talk about their profit and earnings and everything else. But in the employee ownership environment, you do need to share that with everybody because they're part of the shareholder team. So you do want to have open book management, and then you also set the targets for the team. So what we are designing is that there's commission based pay for the doctors, but then to drive certain numbers that will drive both revenue and EBITDA, then you boil down the whole productivity of the practice to a number that everybody can understand. And in this methodology, it's called a critical number. So what we are doing it as an experiment in two hospitals, we are boiling down the actual target in the budget in EBITDA to the number of patients that each department, and they have grooming, they have pet hotel, or what the pet resort, what they call sort of boarding, and hospital. So three departments. We boiled down for them the target and the budget to EBITDA in number of clients they see per day, each department. So then everybody can understand that number. Because if you'll tell the technician or the CSR, you need to watch your cogs, they'll be like, what? So they have no idea what that is. But if you're saying that if we can see 43 patients per day this quarter, everybody will get a bonus on top of the shares that are growing, which comes out of the budget. But then if you hit above the budget, then we can actually split that and have a bonus for everybody. That makes it exciting. And then you do it not annually, you do it quarterly. And then there's a design behind it where you then every day you check in and say, okay, we got 43 patients yesterday. Our target is 40, so we're three above. Yay, let's celebrate. And then midday, you check in and go, okay, we've seen 27 patients. It's only 15 to go to our target. So it actually engages on a daily basis. But then what it also does, which is, I'm particularly fascinated about this, is it creates the forecasting process that comes from bottom up. And what I mean by that is that, well, first of all, none of those things are usually is something that veterinarians are looking at. They never have a budget. They just like, I make money, put it in the bank. My bookkeeper pays the taxes. Like they have no idea.
Yeah.
Nobody's budgeting. It's like, it's, well, some of them are. I shouldn't say that, but usually not
Well, I mean,
complicated.
that's like those conversations we've had where folks have, well, I have 4 years of a certain medication on hand, and I keep it in my garage at home because I got a really good deal on it. And you're going,
Yep.
that's
Like,
going to
well,
really throw off your numbers. Yeah, but I'm going to use it eventually.
yeah, yeah. They have no idea. So one thing is to, and the underpinning knowledge to that is actually business acumen. So everybody in the hospital needs to understand. So what we've done a basic training on what is revenue, what is expenses, what is profit. So that was just one lecture that we gave to everybody in the hospital, from groomers to pet hotel to everybody, doctors, CSRs. And then the next thing is that we're educating them one level deeper. We're explaining to them what is the spending, which is COGS, what is the staffing cost, and everything else. Once you deliver that, then you equalize all of these numbers to number of patients per day, because that they can see, monitor, and talk about every day. So with that forecasting process is amazing, because then you can talk to CSRs and say, we usually see 40 patients a day. What do you think CSRs can do to increase that number to 42 per day? And then you ask them on the weekly meetings or monthly planning and say, what do you as a team going to do to reach the bonus to see two more patients per day? And they say, okay, well, we can't even see 43, but we're going to accelerate check-in process. We're going to try to convert more people that are calling and landing on the appointment book. So what they just done by saying that, they said, I set the target for myself, which is the forecast, and I'm committing to how I'm going to do that. And then you're rechecking with them every week and saying, okay, are we on target for that? And you do it with every group of people. So you have technicians, they will say, we want to turn the room faster, we want to draw the blood faster, we want to do this, we want to do this, to facilitate seeing 43 patients per day. Doctors, what are you going to do? I'm going to start dictating medical records instead of typing. I'm going to go into the room with a technician, and we're going to improve our scheduling process. So everybody on in their role, they can understand, how do I see more patients per day? And then as management, you just map it to the budget and how do you hit above the budget. And then basically the bonus is then paid out quarterly. And then you do small celebrations along the way. So not only, so there's three components to that compensation plan. There's long-term strategy for employee ownership. There's shorter term strategy, but it's a quarterly bonuses. And then there's also small celebrations, which you create friendly competitions between them. You give them T-shirts, or they commit to deposit that bonus into the community fund, and they go to a bowling game together as a team. You do some social stuff, celebrating small wins. So my hypothesis, and that was my very long answer to one of the hypotheses, is that we're going to put those three components in and see if that actually drives the behavior and improves the morale and decreases burnout.
That's going to be really cool. I mean, it makes me think just about, positions that I've been in where there are front desk team members and staff and teammates that are maybe don't have a metric driven result. It's more task driven or function driven. And I think of, as we talked about before, I started my life selling used cars. So I've been in the used car industry, and that's very easy to measure. This many cars are out there, and we want this many to leave as soon as possible. But the front desk and the receptionists, they weren't incentivized by that. We were heavily incentivized. And if you've ever walked into a used car dealership, you understand just how incentivized we were. But it's kind of neat that if we were to have said to the receptionist, hey, if we can sell 3 more cars this week, you guys are going to be able to participate in this. What are you going to do that? Well, I'm going to keep notes of whose clients are coming in, what the appointments look like, maybe have a good idea of where to point people while they're waiting to make things happen. As opposed to them saying, someone walks in, I call someone who's available, we move, I move on. And they did a spectacular job, but that's kind of a cool way to see how that's going to work. So I'm really excited to see that.
And there's
So
another cool component to it. That's all wonderful. How do you make this actionable? And there needs to be education. So you educate your people on the basic business acumen, because if they don't understand the correlation between the number of people and the average check transaction, because you can see 150 nail trims, and if you do those for $10, that's not going to replace 25 whatever else is there. Then also correlation to revenue, the spending. So now you start educating them when they say, I want a new floor mat in front of the dental station and this and that, and then you're like, all right, but that's going to hit our profit. So you create discussions around it. And then, but what you need is visual. If you don't visualize this and you just talk about it once and say, hey, we need to hit the number of patients, well, they will bring 150 nail trims. So what you need is the tool that will actually show the goal, B, the bonus, and then C, how all those numbers correlate. And that's what we build a proprietary tool internally. It's an app, and every team member has the app and can monitor on a daily basis where they're at, where their goal is, and how to get there. So that's a very important component, visualization of those things.
that's great. Well, I think that's going to be really cool to see. And I look forward to, catching up on how we're seeing that throughout the year, and then also what the results give us next year. I know Galena, who we spoke about before, wanted us to make sure that we discuss the incredible research paper that was put together on the burnout triggers in veterinary medicine. So we've got that published on our website. And then, within that, we put together some of the actionable framework of how to reduce those things. And we're going to be able to put all those show notes, all the links, everything in the show notes, and people can download that for free. So as we've said from the beginning, people ask us why we do a podcast, telling people everything that we do. And it's because we really hope that if everyone can help reduce burnout, that would be the goal. Whether it's us that's the most successful at it, or it's levels all the ships, that would be spectacular. So we're happy to have that resource out there for people.
Precisely. So yeah, look up on the links, and there's a quite extensive methodology that you can find, and we're always happy to talk about it further and discuss if you have any questions.
Wonderful. Well, thanks, Ivan. Looking forward to the next episode, and I'll chat with you soon.
Likewise, always a pleasure. Cheers.
Thank you so much for listening to Consolidate That. If you want to hear our new episodes, please find us on any podcast platform. Also, you can learn more about us on our website at galaxyvets.com.